Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to check out a full album today, that one being Celebration of the May Queen by Rogue Frequency. This album just came out today, and one of the members of the album is a pretty big member of the community as well. If you've ever seen Musket00 commenting under one of the videos or in the Discord server, they're the guitarist and one of the vocalists in this group. So let's dive into this then and see what's going on with this album. We have about an hour's worth of music ahead of us and a nice little video to go along with all of the songs. Let's dive in and start off with the first track called Maiden in My Fields.
Magical and almighty, what are we to do? It's the season that's so godly, celebrate the new.
Very folky start to this.
Eyes are like the sun, she enlightens us and twice a mortal soul, come and take us away. Indulge us now, we listen to the Maiden.
Interesting. Very quick rhythmic delivery on this. Love the dynamics on the violin.
You're the maiden in the fields, oh how you ripen and the fruit is here to steal, so feed yourself well. Indulge us now, we listen to the May Queen, there's dancing at the fair, music fills the air.
Like that walking bass line underneath all this too.
Indulge us now, we listen to the May Queen, tomorrow comes the dawn with summer in the air. Follow her now, through the woods to town. Follow her now, through the woods to town. Follow her now, through the woods to
We have the guitar over here playing the same melody as the vocal line. This isn't the first time that's happened. I wonder if that's going to be a consistent thing that we hear.
Follow her now, through the woods to town. Follow her now, through the woods to town. Follow her now, through the woods to town. Follow her now, through the woods to town.
Yeah, dude, ramping up the energy. Nice, oh, we have spoken word off on the side too. Anyways, accelerando, the increasing of tempo. All right. Interesting first track there. For whatever reason, I wasn't expecting folk. I'm curious if that's just how this opening track's going to be, or if this ends up being a folk album. I can't even call it folk rock. This kind of feels very traditional folk here. We have acoustic instrumentation across the board. I think lots of group vocal parts that aren't necessarily done in a modern harmonized way. There are some good vocal harmonies in here, but there's also some sections that just kind of feel like a group of people singing together, not really paying too much attention about pitch, just kind of creating this large group of vocals. There's a lot of violin lines throughout here, and as far as percussion, it sounds like we have hand drums throughout most of this. It didn't really dawn on me until, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes in, that the percussion isn't a drum kit. We had a tambourine at the beginning, and that was a rather consistent sound throughout. And like I said, we had the hand drums that I remember noticing closer to the midpoint of the track. And so it ends up being a very, to me, it feels very woodsy, very lively, and I love the group aesthetic of it. It feels like a group of people just coming together and playing some music in a live setting with acoustic instruments. I think the production does a great job of doing just enough to ensure that everything sounds clear and clean without removing some of that live performance aesthetic. I don't know necessarily what that is, how that's achieved, but this track feels like a performance. It doesn't feel like people taking turns in a studio, playing their parts, and then an engineer, smashing it all together later to form the full track. This feels like a live group setting. And I love that. I think the production does a lot in that area. And it kind of lends itself well to the bits at the end. The people off on the side just speaking as if this is taking place in a tavern somewhere. And then someone shouting, "Hey, get off the table." And I can just imagine that this traveling group of bards have set up shop in this tavern, and the music is inspiring the patrons, and they're jumping and dancing and singing together, and they're up on the tables now. And the bartender's like, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" Yeah, I think the entire vibe here, it's done really well from a compositional side, but also the production side. Now, I had mentioned that as far as melody is concerned, we frequently found that any lead vocals were paired with another instrument, sometimes the acoustic guitar, sometimes the bass even, and sometimes a violin. I thought this was nice, gave us some texture layering on those melodies, but I also like just as much when the instruments get a solo moment, and this frequently was handed to the violin. But I quite enjoyed these melodies. I thought that they captured a very free and fun vibe, typically very adventurous and joyful, lots of larger jumps in pitch too. That's a lot of that freedom I kind of feel in the melodic writing there. But always pushing the song forward. The solos themselves never really feel like moments to focus on the instrument or the musician as much as a way for the story to be passed on from vocals to another instrument. It is now their job to tell the story, to push the track forward, rather than spotlighting the musician themselves. I really appreciate that in this track, and I know 4 minutes isn't an exceptionally long track, but it also feels like it went by really quickly. Structurally, there's a nice divide between repetition, cycles, loops, bringing back ideas that we have heard previously in a way to reinforce those ideas and create this familiar component to the track, while still creating this feeling of linearity. It does feel like a story rather than a series of cycles. Maybe there is a verse-chorus structure in here, but for whatever reason, I didn't quite grab that. I did notice some repetition, but to me it felt more linear. And I really appreciate that middle-of-the-road way of crafting music in general, but particularly this song, I think it works well bringing ideas back while also pushing the sound forward. Aside from that, I think the only thing else I want to bring up right here off of this first track is general instrumentation and performance. I love the walking bass line in here. I love the sounds of the guitars. They have a nice, rich warmth to them. I don't know how many guitars. I noticed at least maybe 2 distinct timbres. I don't know if that's string material or string size or different bodies on the guitar or what. But yeah, I do like the variety of tones. A lot of them tend to have this warmer, earthier sound, which I think works really well with the whole folk vibe going on. And the percussion was sort of in that same realm of being lively and appropriate for the setting. Trading out cymbals for the tambourine is a great idea. The tambourine pretty much did what the hi-hat or ride cymbal usually does in a drum kit, which is keep the tempo. Maybe a little bit of flourish from time to time, but mostly there to be a brighter metronome. That's exactly what we get with the tambourine, but the tambourine just feels more appropriate timbre-wise. So just really great choices all around, great tones and timbres on the instruments. And once again, just solid production. It pulls everything together in a beautiful way. Let me hit some lyrics on this and we'll push forward. So this song is about summer having come, that the sun is out now, that this is a season celebrating the new. Now, I kind of got a spring vibe from a lot of this, but given it's the May Queen, I assume we're looking at something a bit more summerish. Although May, I suppose, can also be a name. So I'm kind of leaning still towards the month. Regardless, oh, actually, right here, tomorrow comes the dawn with summer in the air. So yes, this is about summer then. The May Queen seems to be some sort of deity for summer in general. Says that she enlightens us. Her eyes are like the sun. That will listen to the May Queen as tomorrow summer comes. Describes her as the maiden in the fields, ripening the fruit. There's so much of it. You should feed yourself well. There's dancing in the air and dancing at the fair, and music fills the air. It ends with follow her now through the woods until town. And this takes us to track 2 then, which is called Chase the White Stag, which I think is interesting as we just got done talking about... Wrong button there. As we just got done talking about heading through the woods. Now, Chase the White Stag is actually going to move into the track Into the Woods, which makes me... Is this a concept out? I guess we got to keep getting through it to figure out. But like I said, the end of track 1 says, follow the queen through the woods. Track 2 is called Chase the White Stag. I assumed we were in the woods, but track 3 is called Into the Woods. So this is going to take up the next roughly 7 minutes of music between these 2 tracks. Let's dive in. Oh, okay. There's some distorted guitar. We still have the violin, but we have a full kit for our percussion. Oh, what? Call and response between bluesy guitar and electric bass. Yeah, dude. So we had this section A, and then the call and response B. Now we're back to this section something a bit moodier.
Chase a white stag in the glow of the dawn. He flies, clearing the ferns of the undergrowth. He soars. Chase a white stag in the glow of the dawn. He flies, clearing the ferns of the undergrowth.
I like how there's, I don't know if I can call it a darkness underneath all of this. Dang, those vocal layers though. We got this cool line over here too. Wonderful ornamentation off of this guitar. Nice bit of grit there. This is gorgeous. Bringing back the A section. I'm really glad we're checking out this third shorter track after that last one, because a lot of what I want to talk about in the last one is kind of covered in this one too, in a different manner, different atmosphere and emotion, but similar composition techniques that I'm quite enjoying. Ooh. Now the next track is called Cerebral Frenzy. That track ended with a slowing down and a warping visually of mushrooms. I'm curious if any of that's going to come together. Yeah, though this, as much as I enjoyed the first track, I think it does a great job of setting a general vibe. We do explore more folky elements in these two tracks. Track 2, I think, is really where things have started to stand out for me, at least on the compositional side of things. Even if this track was still acoustic, still focusing on folkier sounds and atmospheres rather than the moodier rock tones that we saw, especially in the midpoint, I still think the composition here is incredibly solid and would steal my attention out of these first three tracks. The A and the B section, or I guess generally just the A section here, is fine. I enjoyed it for a spell. The riff has a lot of energy to it, very driving, very forward momentum, assuming that this is a concept album and we are following the May Queen through the woods at this point. I think that it has the right sort of forward, galloping, free-spirited energy that it needs. Dun 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 dun, like very, very energetic, very driving, and especially coming back to this riff after the midpoint in the track, when we kind of brought the energy down a little bit, you can absolutely feel that energy there. I also love the call and response between the bass line and the bluesy guitar work. I'm a big fan of putting the bass in the spotlight. I love bluesy guitar work in general. Call and response, something else I love compositionally. Great idea. And I think generally it works here, but it never hit me in a way that I think it was mostly due to the repetition. I don't understand how the two ideas work off of each other. I think there's a subtle harmonic shift between the driving energy of the riff and the playful back and forth of the bass and guitar, especially moving from that folk rock into blues guitar. It's a very big division there, and maybe I'm just missing the larger theme on why we need this schism. But it does have a playful back and forth there, which may be about the chase of this white stag. But once we get into that moodier midpoint, I'm completely sold here. There's some fantastic vocal layers going on. They're talking about chasing down the stag and how it glows and soars in the undergrowth and just how majestic it is, using terms like flying and soaring despite probably being a grounded animal. It is spoken about almost mythologically, so maybe it can literally soar and fly, but I'm going to wager it doesn't. But there comes an almost... I had mentioned that this middle point here, dark, I don't think is the right term for it, but there is something moodier about this moment, and I think it's more about a gravitas than a darkness, although musically it kind of comes across as a darker tone in general. We've lost that bright, almost, innocent, everything is great, everything's joyous feeling that we had in the beginning of this track and in the previous track, and have explored something a bit more down energy and down tempo here. But it does feel grounded, almost as if we're supposed to be in awe of this, but I think also introducing something a bit more darker in visual theme. A lot of this a lot of this album actually feels very bright, feels very summery. This feels more twilight, dusk, dawn. There is a brightness to it, but it's also something paired with a darkness as well. Twilight is the wrong. Dusk and dawn is what I was going for there. And I think that idea sheds light on what is supposed to be emotionally felt here. It's moved away from a joyful playfulness with this animal and more about a reverence for it for whatever reason. And the words, I think, lean into that well. Chase it, it glows. Sorry, it chase it in the glow of, oh, it even says right there, it's in the glow of the dawn. It says that it flies, it soars through the ferns of the undergrowth. There's a lot of beauty and majesty and grace in the way that it's described here. But what stands out to me here isn't necessarily just the atmosphere, which I think is well done. It's actually what comes after that in the back half of this midpoint. There is a ton of layering. There's counterpoint, there's hocket, there's ornamentation, there's multi-layered harmony. There's so many ideas all going off at one time, and it sounds gorgeous. Absolutely loved every moment of this. I do think it went for maybe 8 bars too long. I thought we had wrapped it up. I thought it kind of was around the point I was ready to move on anyway, subjectively. And it really felt like the ideas were forming together to reach an endpoint. And then it started again, but only for like 8 more bars, maybe 16 bars tops before it left. And I kind of struggled to figure out why that was there. I don't think that it necessarily feels like it goes against the narrative writing, but it does feel like we were approaching a good endpoint. And like I said, subjectively, I was ready to move too. I thought me and the song were lining up. And the melodic elements that came after it feel like they fit. They don't feel like an extension, but it did feel like, at least harmonically and functionally, the kind of stuff we have on the foundation, all of that was ready to move on. And the more melodic ideas weren't. And it kind of created a little bit of division there for me, at least. But that's such a small little blemish on such a fantastic section. I loved listening to the guitars and the bass and the violin, all kind of not necessarily competing for space, but playfully dancing around one another. There's so many neat little ideas popping in around on the outskirts of the sound too. If you get away from the core center and kind of push out to the outsides, you can hear, I think it was a guitar off on the right that was just doing these nice bends. Not really contributing melodically or harmonically, but just presenting this little bit of flourish on top of everything. And it was just an absolutely gorgeous moment. I do like the build back into the A section, and I think the general push towards the end of this track was a good one, but I personally didn't want to go back to the A section. I felt a little bit of, I don't know that we have a word for what I was feeling there. I was ready to do something new, and the song was ready to go back to the beginning, which I assume we kind of have to in the general theme of all of this. We were chasing this animal, and now we are in reverence of it. And we're taking a moment to really enjoy this moment and sit in awe of it. And now it is time to get through the woods, possibly, to finish our trek back into town. I'm assuming this is a concept album. Maybe it's not. As we get further into the album, I'm going to continue to check in on this concept and see if we actually do have interconnected ideas between tracks or not. But this does, I think, move us into track 3 really well, which is a return to track 1's folkier ideas. And I don't think that coming into this from the heavier rock stuff that we had in the middle of track 2, I don't think that would have worked. Pulling back to the more adventurous, lighthearted, folky sounds, bringing in the violin once again, not as a lead instrument, but more as a fiddle kind of sound coming in. That really helps transition the sound of this track into track 3's instrumental work there. And I thought this more or less retained the vibe and feeling, sort of that brighter, summery, folky tone from track 1 with that layered, denser writing we saw in the middle of track 2. And that's what I was saying when the track was going on, that I like how this came in after track 2 because I can kind of tie these things together. We once again have layered counterpoint and call and response. I don't think there's call and response in there. There's counterpoint though, harmony, layered ideas, ornamental concepts, just once again, a beautifully written and layered section. So I quite enjoyed the midpoint of track 2 and this little interlude here, although it did end with this draining of sound and tempo. Pitch fell, speed plummeted. And of course, visually, we kind of had this warping going on, all of it within the imagery of mushrooms. So I'm interested to see where track 4 takes us, as it is called Cerebral Frenzy. I think that'll be interesting to see what kind of music they choose to take this album forward. Let's dive into some lyrics for, well, none of these. We've already gone over the lyrics for White Stag, and track 3 didn't have any. So, let's dive into Cerebral Frenzy then. See what's going on here. We have that nice triplet across beats 3 and 4. It allows the song to have
moving feet kick the morning tears, not synchronized. The ancient dance, flowered virgins, tribal stance. Everyone here is getting high, even the woods and the sky. Stags they watch by standing stones, druids mock ravens go alone. Wenches grumble, they are bones, pained applause fills the summer homes. Everyone here is getting high, even the woods and the sky. How they dance with tambourines in hands, beautiful, cerebral frenzy. Golden hair kiss the sunlight of ecstasy.
Ooh, I like that.
How they dance with tambourines in hands,
harmonizing too.
Cerebral frenzy. Golden hair kiss the sunlight of ecstasy. The smell of the roast hangs on the smoke. Spilling wine man tells a joke. Laughter flirts with all these sounds. Dancers, oak trees they surround. Everyone here is getting high, even the woods and the sky.
I love that back and forth between the guitar and the violin. Good word painting there too. They have tambourines in hand. I like that. The tremolo. Oh, of course, now that I notice it. I do think it's interesting how the tremolo violin work kind of emulates this really quick tambourine work here. Bassline, dude. Is this going to pull us into the next track or just an abrupt... Yep, just an abrupt end. yeah, that's a fun little track there. And I think it's an interesting back and forth on this one. It's primarily two main ideas. We kind of get the A section and then the B section. We have a bit of a break for the bridge, and then we come back for the B again. Pretty straightforward rundown here. But I do like a lot of the little touches on this. As I had mentioned, there was that part where we have the guitar and violin, dun dun, dee dee dee, dun dun, dee dee, something along those lines there. I really like that idea that it's one melody or one melodic lick that's split between two instruments. So you not only have this pitch shift from this lower tone to the higher note where we actually have the movement, but we also have the timbre shift from the strummed guitars to the bowed violins. I really like that idea. And the more that we're getting through this album, the more that I'm seeing this really clever and smart interplay between instrumentation, whether it is something more intense and layered like the midsection of Chase the White Stag, or just something like this. Just a little bit of splitting ideas between instruments and allowing them to dance around each other. This concept of intertwining and interworking parts seems to be a rather consistent theme throughout this, and I hope that it continues on because I really enjoy it. Now, something else that I found I liked about this song in particular is the vocal work. And this has been something that's kind of been consistent throughout the album, but we honestly haven't had a lot of lyrics yet. But I did slightly mention it during track 1, is more of a percussive, rhythmic, fast delivery of lyrics. And we kind of see that on this track too. I'm curious if this is going to be something that is consistent on this album, because to me it's kind of expected and kind of unique. I think for the musical style, I don't necessarily expect the more rhythmic and quicker delivered vocals. But when I think of folk music, it kind of matches. And I think for the most part, especially since the vocals tend to be paired with an instrument that is playing the same accent points or even occasionally the same melody line, it actually makes sense, as a lot of the instrumental lines are a bit more driven. They're more percussive and rhythmically diverse. And so bringing that into the vocals too is interesting. I am kind of looking ahead a little bit and seeing that many of these tracks have quite a few lyrics to them and not very long lengths. As I mentioned, this album is an hour long. We have 14 tracks. We have a couple of lengthier songs, but a lot of this stuff is in the 3 to 5 minute range. So I think we're going to end up, well, especially when we bring in the idea that this band loves to do instrumental moments, we're going to find that there's just a little bit of time that they want to cram a lot of lyrics into. And I think that this lyrical delivery style works really well for them. It kind of matches at least half of my expectations for this style of music. Like I said, the folkier ideas, for whatever reason, feel more natural to me to have this type of delivery. But it also gets the information across, and it's very clear, and there's still a melodic quality to it too, though I do think that the specific pitches of these tones are not quite the emphasis on it. I think it's almost a sing-songy spoken word kind of thing at times. And that's what stands out to me more, is the rhythmic cadence of these lines that eventually do wind up at a specific note, and maybe they'll hold a note out a little bit. Like one of the lines in here is da 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 da. So you have this quicker pace at the beginning, and then these longer drawn out syllables at the end. And just, on the sense of contrast and dynamics, having this rhythmic push and pull there, faster movement versus slower movement, works really well at keeping these interesting throughout, which I think is something this band has done really well, even from track 1, is this push and pull idea. Now, on this topic of push and pull, there's actually something really interesting about this track that I never picked up in any of the others, and I wonder if it's specifically for this song. Did anybody else pick up the looseness of time? I did. But the thing is, I get my internal metronome going. It's perfectly in time. There's no swaying of tempo on this track. And yet there are specific moments that feel just a little slower or faster than I expect. Now, the lyrics, of course, mention that everyone's getting high, even the woods and the sky. And I think this is really interesting because it created an environment where I was unsure if I was hearing things correctly. And I wonder if there weren't little embellishments. Maybe the drummer drags just a hair bit for one specific accent while nobody else drags at all. It feels like that beat was stretched out a little bit, but it was only for that split second. The faster moving ideas are locked back in. All the melodic instruments are in step with each other. The drummer's fine now that I'm paying attention to them. What happened there? Why did that feel slow? And so much of this song, to me, feels like stretching and squashing of time, keeping a consistent overall tempo, but moment to moment having these little micro fluctuations. This, I think, actually pairs well into another dynamic quality that this album has played with, which is performance dynamics. I had called this out on the very first track with the violin, where each individual note that they were playing had a different volume to it. It created something that to me felt overall very dynamic. It's something that I attribute more to classical music than rock, where it's not so much about playing the correct note, but playing the correct note correctly. What kind of attack, what type of emphasis, what should the volume be? Is there a swell on it? Are we swelling up or are we swelling down? It's so much about the nuance of the performance rather than just making sure you get the note correct. And I heard a lot of that on the violin in the first track, and there's quite a bit of it on this one as well. Little volume swells here and there on different instruments. And I think that pairs really well with these, I guess we can call them tempo swells. We don't have a term for this. Super tiny micro swells in the tempo. And it just creates something that feels like it's kind of malleable, constantly in flux, never growing and shrinking in large enough value that it's noticeable, but little bits where you can't tell if it's actually happening or not. I find that to be really interesting for a song about people presumably eating mushrooms and having a nice psychedelic trip. Speaking of that, let's get rid of the presumptions, dive into the lyrics, and see what's actually going on here with the full context of the story. Much of this reminds me of the joyful festivities we explored a little bit on track 1. It talks about the sound of drums resonating in ears, feet that are moving, an unsynchronized dance. That's even better. It talks about stags watching by standing stones. It talks about tambourines in hand while this dance goes, golden hair fluttering in the sunlight, the smell of roast hanging on the air, and wine being spilled as people tell jokes and laugh. It also says everyone here is getting high, even the woods and the sky. This is just a big party. That's what this song is about. And I suppose the cerebral frenzy is more of the dopamine hits from all of the senses being engaged at the same time, feeling, the wind and whatever that's going on here. And then the music hitting the ears and the food and wine on the tongue, the scents. It even talks about the smell of roast hanging in the air. So it touches on all this, and the visuals too. Lots of description of visual ideas. So it's about being inundated by all of your senses of just pleasure and joy and festivities. I think the song does a pretty good job of capturing that overall vibe. So let's dive into this next track then. We Once Ruled the World. Let's kick it. Nice 2 and 4 heavy accent.
We gathered at the house on the street. Our clan has girls and boys. That beat music plays on in the background. It's a soundtrack of our young lives.
Once again, this push and pull. When we get back to that section, I'll showcase it a little bit with some visual.
We swim while pretending to fight. Bruce ribs look someone stolen. At the air bomb drop, the pool becomes crowded. So good that everybody.
We have these moments of rest and then of explosive energy.
And we all drank a lot. Our closeness felt immortal. We knew we ruled the world. But memories crammed.
Why did that last passage remind me of System of a Down, or maybe more specifically, Scars on Broadway? The dual violins against the vocal melody.
At night we all hid in the smoke, talked about fantastic things. We were far away from our future. Our horizons didn't mean anything. It was summer, we all got high, and we all laughed a lot. Our closeness felt immortal.
The pedal tone over here just driving energy.
Fond memories crammed into my mind, fading with every passing year. Hold on tight to the ones that are bright and clear. Forgetting them is what I fear. Fond memories crammed into my mind, fading with every passing year. Hold on tight to the ones that are bright and clear. Forgetting them is what I fear. Fond memories crammed into my mind, fading with every.
Yeah, dude, this is kind of punky.
When we rule the world.
All right, very straightforward on this one. I don't know that this is going to be a long analysis segment, but I do want to take a moment to kind of discuss some of this stuff. What I noticed right off the bat, though, interestingly, is that the first verse, when the vocals kicked in, kind of reminded me of something post-rocky. Almost something a bit Talking Heads, about the ways that the instruments are layered and this almost monotone delivery of the vocals, focused again more on texture and rhythm than anything else. Something about that general atmosphere just felt very Talking Heads to me, though with a folkier composition and instrumental timbre usage. But then I also had this interesting revelation in the chorus that reminded me of Darren from System of a Down, although I think the specific, maybe Scars on Broadway, which was Darren's solo project after System. Something about that chorus, I think it's maybe the harmony there, or I don't know, something about it. If anyone else got that same feeling and you like you can pinpoint, you're like, it's this song, this is what, this part of this song is what it reminds me of, let me know, because that's gonna be in my mind all day. Why did I think of System of a Down there? Because nothing else about that feels like System of a Down, honestly, and yet I still kind of got some vibes there. But aside from those two minor and maybe not even important revelations here, the song basically just does a fantastic job of what the album's already been doing. We have push and pull, we have dynamics, we have layered vocal lines, we have the excellent melodic layering there at the end of the track, we have the violins and the guitar playing counterpoint and dancing around the vocals. We have the bass shifting between more moving and driving lines and more simpler foundational concepts, and the percussion is there to create the flow and general pace of the track. The vocals are laid down rather quickly, focusing more on rhythm, and yeah, just really solidifying this sound that I'm beginning to appreciate is Rogue Frequency, at least as they are on this album. And so I think this is a really good track to possibly show a new listener. I think it embodies a lot of who they are, but it's also short enough that it's a very concentrated shot of Rogue Frequency. And I think if you enjoy this track, you're probably going to enjoy the rest of this album, as it does explore some different ideas and takes some of the parts of this track and extrapolates it. But this is a really good quick showcase of, I think, a lot of the core elements that I'm experiencing on this album. Lyrically, I've hit an inflection point. Maybe this is still about the same people in the rest of the tracks, assuming that this is a concept album, but it also stands alone very well and fits a modern perspective of things. So much of this song, maybe because of the folk aesthetic, to me has felt older. In my mind, I've envisioned a pre-electric era, or at least a pre-electronics era. Maybe televisions, maybe home computers, but it's still a majority of the time I picture a lot of people spending time outside of the home. And that isn't necessarily destroyed here. It's not like we've suddenly brought up cell phones or something in the lyrics, but this song hits me. And I am me alive right now, which makes the lyrics feel more modern. And that makes sense. It's a song about remembering your past. About remembering the days when you felt like you ruled the world and you were immortal. I'm going to assume, at least for me anyways, this is my late teens, early 20s right here. Now, there's more specific anecdotes in here that I don't necessarily align with, but the general concept of looking back on your younger days and kind of remembering some of them and realizing you don't remember all of them. Kind of hoping you don't forget the ones that you really enjoy returning to at times. The chorus, I believe, says, "Fond memories crammed into my mind, fading with every passing year. Hold on tight to the ones that are bright and clear, forgetting them is what I fear." It's this idea about growing up and finding that the gap between who you are now and when you remember these times of hanging out with your friends and feeling like the world was your oyster. You had so much of a future ahead of you. You haven't been hit with the reality of life yet. There's a very big difference between maybe not necessarily who you were, though maybe also that, but your mindset about life and the world. You're missing experience at that point. Kind of have an idealized outlook on everything. And realizing that the distance between then and now, it keeps growing. Then is becoming so far away from you. Most of the rest of this track, though, are anecdotes talking about gathering at houses and just playing music, calling it the soundtrack of our young lives. Talks about going into the pools, having all your friends there and just chilling and hanging. Talking about futures. at one point even saying our horizons didn't mean anything. I really like that. I think that captures a very peculiar and specific moment, at least in my life too, where the future just kind of seems like something that will happen eventually. You have some goals, you know what you might want to do then, but it's so far off, you don't really have to worry about it yet. Bills aren't a thing you really have to worry about, scrambling to make ends meet. A boring job, maybe even a job you like. But all that's so far off, you don't even have to really think about it yet. We once ruled the world. There stood a time when we ruled the world. This feeling of having it all. Yeah, like I said, I think this is a very relatable track, especially for anyone getting older. It doesn't even necessarily have to be that your present adult life is terrible or garbage or just not as bright as your childhood. It's just that there's a very distinct difference in mindset between the two. And sometimes it's nice to remember those days when the heavy stuff didn't matter. When all the big decisions were still so far off, you didn't even have to think about them yet. And realizing that you're forgetting more and more of the memories of that time because the distance between now and then continues to grow. And like I said, this is a point of inflection. It makes me wonder what this album is about. Maybe it still is conceptual, but my idea of it and what I was getting from it so far seems to be maybe a little off. I don't know. Gonna keep an open mind going forward to see where this story takes us. All right. Next up is called Summer Breeze. Let's dive into this one. Interesting placement. It feels like the guitar is subtly shifting from center left to center and back. This is a very sharp difference in vocal delivery. Long held out notes. Dude, that reminded me of some grunge track from the late 90s, maybe? What am I thinking of there? Something very nostalgic about that harmony, that idea of holding on to a note, adding another, shifting the first. I like the shift from this brighter guitar that took up most of the verse into this earthier tone right here, focusing on these lower tones with a meatier string. The bass taking over the guitar line. Okay. And interestingly, this brings in a grungier tone too. Oh, the bass line moving underneath. It's a really nice expansion of the originally just a single acoustic guitar line. I love too how the bass is doing the pedal here while the guitar has the lead, and then they invert. I really hope it sticks in the instrumental stuff. I kind of figured we were going to come back to this, but nice expansion on it though. There's new stuff on the outsides. I'm not going to pause after this. I think I've said all that I need. But I do think that this idea has been taken to the extents that it can. I certainly find this track to be a little long-winded, since it's really based on one idea for almost 7 minutes. The expansion from the acoustic to the full band worked really well, and I like the blues guitar solo on top of it, but we spend a lot of time with this riff, and I don't know that it's strong enough to really support that much, but I do know that I tend to have less of a tolerance for singular focused songs, so it could be a very subjective take on that, and well, it is. It's my opinion on it.
Tell me, what would you say? No, no. If I was a blind man, would you show me the way? No, no. If you're the angel, come and save me. Put money in my hands. Be forgiven for the killing and become a saint man.
I love the rhythmic sharpness of that last section. Oh, okay. We do have 2 violins though. And they do back and forth sometimes.
If I was a leper,
This album has been pretty good about smoothly moving between ideas. I think this is one of the first times I really noticed harsh jumps. There is a little bit of changes in the vocal lines. So this is interesting. There is a legitimate 14 seconds of silence here for an intermission. That marks the middle of the album then. Finished with the first 6 or 7 tracks. We have the next 7 ahead of us. It doesn't perfectly divide the album though. 28 minutes out of an hour-long album. Close to halfway. Not perfect. But honestly, even getting that close, I think, is impressive. It provides an intermission as clearly in the middle of the album as it can be, without artificially extending the last track or possibly artificially shortening a future track. I think that was a good way to wrap up this side of the album, because this intermission also plays, presumably, I mean, you can't play the intermission in a point, but it takes up the album flip time. If this were a traditional vinyl, which maybe they do sell those, you would have to flip to the B side here. So presumably this intermission is, I'm going to guess, the end of the A side. Anyways, though, it does act as a really nice way to break up these two parts of the track. It isn't just an artificially integrated moments of silence. And even though it isn't silence, I find the general audience noise to be a fun little take on that. But this is where the album would be stopping anyways, because you need to flip it over. So I think it's pretty cool that this is kind of broken up into 2 pieces, and I think that Someday does a great job of wrapping up the ideas here on a high note, creating a peak and a nice tapering off to wrap up Act 1. And it does this through a lot of energy. I think this is one of the more energetic tracks on this first half here. It is driving. There's a lot of quicker vocal work going on here, and it continues to go in the direction of what I enjoy about this group, which is layered instrumentation. We have electric guitars, we have basses, we have acoustic guitars, we have the violins, we have all the vocal lines, and they're all just going off at the same time with really great production to it. There is a bit of a, again, I don't think dark is the right word for it, but given how cheerful and summery and bright a lot of this album is, I really think darker, by contrast, is a great way to describe this. It has a moodier vibe to it, and in fact, parts of this even remind me of some early alternative rock, but done through the lens of lighter style of music. And I quite enjoy that, especially coming off of, was it Summer Breeze? No, Summer Breeze did have a little bit more of a grungier tone to it, but I guess it was We Once Ruled the World. Although I can't... No, it must have been Summer Breeze. Yeah, it was the B section of Summer Breeze. kind of has that grungier element to it, and moving this into alt rock. But what I think is interesting through all this is that it still captures a lot of that quasi prog rock folky vibe, and it feels like it's compositionally using some of these rock tones from the beginning of the 2000s and the end of the 90s, but with a different set of instrumentation, and sometimes even shifting the key, using a similar vibe, but with a different emotion tied to it. And I think that's pretty cool because it creates something that is kind of like a bridge into this type of folk rock. Folk rock is a genre of music I've enjoyed in the past, but I have very little experience with. And generally speaking, while I enjoy the composition of folk rock, sometimes the sound of it doesn't always click with me. And I think that this is doing something well where there's a lot of familiar elements to it while delivering, honestly, a sound that I'm not very familiar with at all. And doing it with many of the qualities of both sides. There is this grungier alt rock early 2000s thing going on through a couple of these songs. And that certainly draws me in, but it's still presented in this folkier aesthetic with these generally brighter sounds. Even when it gets darker, it's still a bright sound overall. And it's merging these two in ways that is drawing me into it. I'm really enjoying that part of it. As for this track in particular, I don't think I have much to add other than pretty much the same thing I've been saying for this entire first half of the album. Fantastic job at using all these instruments, all the vocal work, and it's just such an enticing atmosphere overall. I love the production, the chords, the emotion, the atmospheres. I'm enjoying myself with this. There are certainly some drawn out segments, talked about Summer Breeze, and I think it was Chase the White Stag also, I think had some pacing issues subjectively. Like I had mentioned earlier, I do kind of like more dynamic ideas, and songs that focus on one specific concept have a tendency to bounce off of me. So it's quite possible that those two songs, especially being the longer ones on this first half, might actually have an audience for them, and I'm just not it. But Summer Breeze, I do really think stronger than Chase the White Stag. Summer Breeze, I think, needed something else in it, some sort of B section to get away from that core riff, which just takes up so much of that runtime. But I also can't deny the evolution across that track either. It isn't stagnant at all. But I also tend to listen to music more compositionally than sonically. I'm picturing what's on the paper, and there's very little variation in that realm. So, once again, it's a subjective take on that one. Let me hit some lyrics for Sunday, and we'll dive into the back half. Alright, Someday just seems to be about hoping for some intervention to improve one's position. It says, if I were a beggar, would you ask me to stay? If I was a blind man, would you show me the way? If you're the angel who's come and saved me to put some money in my hands, would I be forgiven for the killing and become a seeing man someday? The second stanza features many of the same lines, but swaps out some of the if I were a blank with a different thing. It says, if I was a drunk man instead of a blind man, would you show me the way? And if you're the angel who's come to save me, instead of asking for money, says, will you cure my broken skin? I'll be walking by tomorrow. Please stop my drinking sin someday. Save me the light. The light save me someday, I guess. That's the best read I have of this, is someone who wants to be in a better position in their life and is hoping that some sort of positive force will enter into their life and help them make that change. Maybe even make the change for them, asking this angel to save them, to cure them, to give them money. Let's dive into the back half of this album. The next track is called Bard, which I'm all over. That sounds fun. And then we have Solstice Queen after that, though we'll probably take a break after Bard to discuss it. Let's dive in. Nice pace to this.
Across from my table I saw him stood, looting Bard's hand, his tail.
Nice 3/4 here. Back to this very quickly delivered vocal work.
He twisted all truth,
very light.
Food from the traveler, musical god.
High energy. Bring it down again. Good push and pull.
We'll be hunting tomorrow to seek Father Time, for the ageless wise man will take needle and word to sow on acceptance, so a new tale will shine. Travelers in their guilds will say, have you heard? The night looked despondent, he may never slay as many hobgoblins as the bard sang.
And once again, we also hear this guitar instrument over here playing alongside with the vocals. Ooh, that's a fun little harmonic shift.
Wise man will take needle and word to sow on each sentence, so a new tale will shine. Travelers in their guilds will say, have you heard?
I like that. A little bit of an adventurous move into this, back into the blues guitar solo stuff. Little expansion on this melody with our instrument off on the left. Solid track right here. I like the emotional resonance on this one. A lot of the music so far has it's either been a little heavier, a little darker, or mostly joyful is what I get through a lot of it, though we did have more of a slightly aggressive element in what I called the alternative rock oriented stuff that we saw around tracks like 5 and 6. But what I don't think we've really had much yet, which is interesting, especially given the lyrics from We Once Ruled the World, is something a bit wistful. And that's what I get from this one. Much of this song feels like a want to return to a previous something, a time, era, I'm not sure. But it feels nostalgic in a form of wanting. And I really appreciate this atmospheric movement, kind of kicking off this half of the album with something a little different than we've heard from previous songs. Much like track 7 did a fantastic job of wrapping up the first set of songs, coming to a midpoint in the intermission, I think this is a great kicking off of the next side of the album, as it starts with things that are both familiar and fresh. It still has all of the writing I appreciate. It still has the push and the pull, the dynamic writing, and it still has the instrumentals and general timbre sounds and production that I've been enjoying on this, but it's just a different musical tale. I feel like the first half is pretty cohesive. There's a lot of overlap in sound, and I really like how this one kicks off with something a little different, while still absolutely sitting in that realm of the familiar. I do think that we have some of the fastest vocal delivery moments in here, and it even gets just a tad bit cluttered with the right guitar that plays along with them. It might be a timing thing, it might be a production thing, I don't know. It's not too distracting, but I did pick up on it a couple of times. But other than that, I think this song is just very smooth, and I really love towards the end when once again we bring in a bluesy guitar solo. And I love this. I haven't really brought this up too much, but I find it to be an interesting sound in general, because the solos themselves tend to pull in a little bit of a blues rock idea. Whammy bar usage, bent strings, anything to really give that emotive element to the performance, as well as typically shifting harmonies as well. The chord progressions played from the blues guitars are usually different than the folky ones that are played throughout the rest of the album. And honestly, I thought this would be a bit more of a clashing idea, particularly at the beginning of the album when we were moving between folkier sections and bluesier sections. I did feel a bit of a division there, but as we begin to merge them, such as towards the end of this track, putting bluesier melodic ideas on top of folkier harmonic ideas, it ends up blending really well. There is a little bit of a division, and I'm not sure what that's from, but ultimately it's a Venn diagram with a rather large overlap between the two. And I think the joyfulness and general upbeat elements of the folk merge really well with the drearier, more pensive sounds that we're getting from the electric guitars, and that's what's creating this nostalgic element to it. It is this look on the past and the bittersweet element of that, the positivity of reliving these moments and the pain of not having them anymore. And like I said, I think it's kind of interesting that we didn't explore any of this in We Once Ruled the World, which was lyrically about that. And maybe we did, and I just completely missed that. But this song seems to sit within that nostalgia rather heavily. And at this point, I'm beginning to wonder if most of this shouldn't be taken more metaphorically. Coming back to We Once Ruled the World, I thought that that was something that very vividly captured a timeless concept and what fit well within the general time frame of the album, but also felt rather modern, something I could engage with. But most of the other songs here, I've been taken at complete surface value. Cerebral Frenzy was about a bunch of friends in the woods having a party and drinking and dancing. But what if it isn't? What if it's just the concept of being around friends and pairing that with the track that comes after it, We Once Ruled the World, and looking back on times when you had friends like this? What if track 5 is about somebody who sees these people having this party and they think back on their life? This all comes about in this track, Bard, which on the surface level is about a bard who comes into a tavern and weaves these elaborate tales that might not be completely true. And some people see through it, but others don't. It talks about the bard getting food from the people in the tavern. It says that he draws maidens away from their weary men. Basically, living the life up right here. It says that he goes out into the world to find new stories, to sew together, to create these tales that, once again, might not be completely true. And as he tells them to people, word of this bard travels, and eventually travelers will ask other people, have you heard of this bard? I hear he's pretty good. We then shift perspective, though. It says, a knight looked desponded. He may never slay as many hobgoblins as the bard sang. Crimson cloaks as the cleric sat on wooden benches, as the fire spat and still burns. To me, this kind of focuses on the people who are actually out there doing stuff. They are less social, maybe even a bit weary, mentally and physically. They're not quite the life of the party. The bard is getting all the attention and not doing anything of what he tells these stories of. Whereas these people are actually out there doing stuff and they're a bit worn down for it. They're not quite given the attention that they should, being that they are real, accomplishing these feats. And it made me think, what if we take this to the next level? What if this is about people who are attention seekers and they'll make up whatever they need to in order to get the attention, while the people who are actually doing interesting things get none of the attention? What if we even interpret this in the concept of artists, people singing songs and making stories up about themselves to make them seem more interesting and get a following, whereas people who actually sing heartfelt songs about things that actually impacted them and actually put their self into the music and be vulnerable are kind of left to the wayside. These are the artists that have barely any listens on Spotify. They don't have that many subscribers on YouTube. Their CDs and their merch doesn't sell as well. Not as many people show up to their shows, but this is the passionate art. Whereas the fakers are the ones who get all the attention. And this sort of revelation of maybe this song has a second layer to it made me start questioning other tracks. I'm not entirely sure that other songs have more depth to them. They might, and I'm not seeing it, but this one absolutely stands out to me as one that is both placed within this framework that the album has mostly caught my attention in. Granted, this, a bard in a tavern with knights, much older than simply, pre-electric modern times that I alluded to earlier. But I think bringing in the folky sound also alludes really well to this era of bards and knights too. But then we get to something like We Once Ruled the World, about, going into pools and hanging out. And to me, that feels way more modern than this track, Bard. I'm starting to think that there might be some thematic connections between many of these songs. but that it's not a conceptual narrative like I had assumed at the beginning. But it does, again, kind of make me question the connections between some of these tracks and the depths that they might have that I'm simply not picking up on for one reason or another. All right. Looks like we have a couple of shorter tracks ahead of us, and then a larger epic split into two parts, then a couple of short ones to wrap up the album. This next one's called Solstice Queen. Ooh. Yeah. Like rock ballad mixed with... Alright, we're kind of getting away from that folkier start. Very interesting movement here.
Well, I swear I heard an angel calling me with a serenade so magical and free. Your voice resonates in my heart, your eyes penetrate my soul, and I'm trembling for the thoughts I can't control. From the darkness drifting lonely, lost at sea, now I have waves of raw emotions washing over me. Your voice draws me towards the shore, the siren's beauty to adore, 'cause your figure it entrances. Are you trying to turn me on? I can feel those little glances. Why does it feel so wrong? As the night grows late, I should be leaving. You move close and I'm barely breathing. Don't want to fight these feelings. Don't wake me if I'm dreaming.
Interesting way to wrap up all that tension into that final moment of uplift. And then this gorgeous guitar solo.
Spend an hour or so held captive in your gaze, whispered promises of passion set our minds ablaze. The fleeting touches of our skin, electrified within. You left me longing for the sin. Didn't mean to fall in love with you so fast. I was enchanted by your magic, and the spell still lasts. From the moment we first met, our destiny was set.
I like the mix of very traditional pop-oriented love song chords mixed with some that are a little less traditional.
Feel no pain if we both keep falling. You're the only gravity that's calling me. I need your love to set me free. If only dreams could be. Now I can only look upon you from afar. You're like a mystic twinkling beauty of a distant star. I've a vision to ignite from that burning ray of light, and a memory of those moments that's shining bright.
Yeah, pretty straightforward ballad-esque love song. We're just gonna move into the next track. I mean, a lot of that was either guitar and vocals or guitar, vocals, and violin.
Might have stolen all the jewels from your loyal crowd. If you go away, please don't go too far.
Ooh,
I might have pushed you hard, pushed you far away. Spoken hurt from
that offbeat
what I
accent.
meant to say. If you go away,
Lots of energy in that.
don't go too far.
Ooh. I love the percussiveness of the guitars alongside that. Ooh. Dude, the violin movement, the very legato playing, contrasting to super staccato performance. Dude, I love this. This uplifts. It's just sort of floating against all the rest of the aggressiveness. Yes. The music doing a great job of capturing this feeling of longing. I love this chorus, man. It's so smooth. It's moody, it's dreary, it captures this loss and longing so well. I feel bad because I really like this chorus, but I feel like it is way overplayed at this point, and I wonder if bringing it back prior to the fade out in its full version before getting the stripped back version for the fade out was really necessary. I mean, maybe even this fade out is a hair bit too long. We're going to be looking at almost a 2-minute fade out. There's still like 90 seconds left of this. I mean, I get the idea behind it. Wait, do we have? All right. So it seems that my times are just a little off, which is fine. So it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's still... That's an indulgent chorus right there. Excellent the first time we heard it. Even better the second time because we had that nice contrast before the more aggressive staccato verse and contrasting that with the more legato, weighty melancholic chorus. I thought that worked really well. It captured a ferocity and an intensity, almost as if there's a frantic element trying to chase this person down. And now that you have their attention, now you're like, dude, don't go. I don't know what's actually going on in the lyrics. I didn't pay attention to the verse lyrics. All I really got out of it was the please don't go from the chorus. But that's what it feels like to me. It's frantic elements followed by this pain, this melancholy. And I thought that worked really well in contrast. And then we had more of the gloomier side of things with the solos in the bridge, keeping with that energy. We came back to the chorus, and I was like, all right, cool, we're good here. And then we did the chorus again, and then again. Now we're on like chorus 4 or 5, and now we're doing the fade out loop, kind of cutting out the middle instrumental part of it and focusing just on these words. And I like the idea. Don't go too far. As the words fade away, they're getting further away from the person. At least that's how I read that movement there. It's just, as much as I love that chorus, it's a little overplayed in the track. And I honestly think that, like I said, maybe cutting out those 2 times between the bridge and the fade out might have helped with that. Maybe even just trimming the fade out back a little bit too might have helped. It just, for a track that I really loved, I ended up not really wanting it to keep going. Sort of the opposite of a song ending too early and you're like, I want more. This song went on a little too long and I was like, as much as I love this, why are we still doing this? And that's not a great feeling. But I do generally enjoy a lot of what that track is aiming for. And I think once again, it's embodying something that's just very different from the first half of the album. We had some lower energy sections on that, but I don't think anything that really grabbed a gloomy melody like this one did. And just the entire feeling of the energy of the verse driving forward, all that momentum, and then just crashing and stopping, and all this momentum. Now this person, after sprinting, is skidding their feet cartoon style, trying to slow down, and now they have to express themselves, and it just feels like this, it's one of those harsh transitions that I think works really well because of the sharp contrast in what's happening here, and you can really feel this division going on. I thought that was excellent. And, coming off of Solstice Queen too, which I thought was a beautiful song, but also really down to earth. Like I had mentioned, a lot of it is guitar and vocals. Occasionally there is the violin off on the side and maybe some more ornamental ideas, but it's just a very chill, low energy ballad. I think it does a great job of capturing the general love song ballad vibes. I had mentioned that some of the chordal passages, they're like, yeah, dude, that's love song chord right there. And then other times it would go in some interesting directions that certainly capture a feeling of awe or positivity and a closeness and intimacy, but not necessarily the more traditional chords I would expect. I think it does a good job of keeping me on my toes, having both sides of those. But it also brings the energy down in a way that I think Too Far the Distance works really well coming off of. In fact, it ramps the energy up with the verse, kind of a neat contrast, but the chorus actually, I think, fits well as far as tempo and the legato playing with Solstice Queen. So this was a really nice group of 2 tracks here, and I quite enjoyed it. A bit of lower energy, less joyfully positive than the beginning of the album, but certainly working in exploring different moods that still catch and feel like they work within the general vibes that the album's going for. And a lot of that's just instrumentation and production. Let me hit some lyrics on these 2. The connection between these tracks goes a bit further than sheer atmosphere and energy. I believe there's supposed to be two sides of the coin. The first side, Solstice Queen, is the lust. It is the love at first sight element that goes on. Talks about seeing, actually at first, hearing an angel call, the voice resonating in my heart, eyes that penetrate my soul. Talks about having raw emotions wash over him as a voice draws him to someone, draws him to a shore. And there's a lot of writing about the physical elements here, being entranced by a figure. Says, why does all of this feel so wrong? I move close and I'm barely breathing. Don't wake me if I'm dreaming. And I really liked how I had mentioned that there's a lot of tension in this section right here. I guess it was the chorus, and it ends with this uplift into this very light, I believe it was a guitar solo, an acoustic guitar solo. I thought that was wonderful. Bringing all this tension to a head, don't wake me if I'm dreaming, and just sitting within this bliss rather than trying to figure out what's going on, how should I go about doing this, and the stresses of choice. Instead, here, just giving into the dream. It says, spent an hour captive in your gaze. The fleeting touches of our skin were electrified, and you left me longing for the sin. Says, I didn't mean to fall in love so fast. From the moment we first met, our destiny was set. From here, though, talks about wanting something else in life. Says, should I jump from the precipice and dive right into you? If only dreams could be. And now I look upon you from afar, like a mystic twinkling beauty of a distant star. I've a vision to ignite from that burning ray of light, and a memory of those moments that's shining bright. He says, I have a task at hand. As much as I would love to stay here with you, I've got something else I need to do. It's an interesting way to wrap up this track going into the lyrics for Too Far the Distance, which is after a relationship has ended. It says, I might have made you cry, I might have put you down, I might have stolen all the jewels from your loyal crown. I might have pushed too far, I might have pushed you away, and I've spoken hurt from these lips, though it's not what I meant to say. Basically says, I've wronged you in this relationship. And the chorus says, but please, if you go away, don't go too far. This is the opposite of a love song. This is a breakup song. The relationship's over, but hopefully we can rekindle things. So, keep me in mind. Don't drift too far. Maybe we can fix things up. And that's pretty much what the entire song is about. Even at the end, where we have the dual vocals going on, it says, where are you? I can't find you. I miss you. And the other vocalist says those hurtful words I can't replace with regrets that leaves a taste of guilt infused with this loss. I think that's an interesting line there. It's regret and guilt. That's exactly the feelings you should feel if you've if you made a mistake and want to make amends for it. Just kind of lays that out there very bluntly, though. But I think that both of these songs do a great job of embodying the side of love that they are focusing on. It's about the positivity and joy of being head over heels with someone, and the other side of a feeling of loss and pain and melancholy of losing someone, of having a relationship end. All right, next track is a bit on the shorter side, called Walking the Wicca. And let's just dive into it. Lots of interesting instruments in here. Dark Masonic chatter. Definitely captures a specific vibe there. I don't think I have all the context necessary to really dive into this. I think, generally speaking, from a purely musical perspective, there is a strong dark undertone to this track. We have some very bassy percussive sounds in here. And when we listen to the harmonic and melodic elements in the violins and some other instruments that I'm not entirely sure of, I think I heard a jaw harp in there. There's something else to the left that I don't recognize the timbre of at all, which is very cool. There's a lot of really neat instrumentation on this track. But when we listen to the harmonic elements and the melodic qualities, it definitely introduces a bit of tension and dissonance to the song that we haven't really heard much of elsewhere on the album. It's certainly tapping into a ritualistic element, especially with the chanting and the very short rhythmic patterns. And I think it captures this general vibe of a dark ritual rather well. It paired fine with the imagery of the hooded or cloaked people with the torches. That all is well done, I think. And the song, I think, is short enough that the general repetition doesn't become too much of an issue. I'm curious about the Masonic chanting, though. I don't think I have the context to really have much to say about that one way or the other. So I think from here we're just going to move forward with the track Burning Daughters, which people with torches, and now the song Burning Daughters. This sounds like a good old-fashioned witch hunt here, which is usually not a topic I enjoy listening to music about. But let's dive into this. This is one of the longer songs on this, sitting at, what's that, 7.5 minutes, and it's broken into two parts, the Inquisition and the Purification. And yeah, now I'm doubly sure we're going to be listening to a witch hunt. So that's not fun. Let's dive into this and see what Rogue Frequency does with this topic. Yeah, so that's a really fun way to break up 2 bars of 4/4.
Last time she will see them laughing.
I also noticed this is another track with an electric guitar, which is not exceptionally common. I like the slight timing difference between the two vocalists. Adds a lot of character to it. The guitars also give it a heaviness that I think, given the lyrics we've seen so far, this is an interesting uplift for this.
They will purify. Remember, if you have a daughter, to bend her knees and let her pray. With her tongue out, there'll be no sending. She'll speak her view the silent way. How could you believe that the world is so round? Never know how many daughters they burn for this sin. How could you believe that we stand upside down? Better hold your tongue, they will purify.
Yeah, very dark and heavy. Is that a key change? Very interesting drum work here. This is a very catchy riff though. It's good that they started off with it. Bringing it back feels right. This is something I haven't brought up much, but having the electric guitars on top of the acoustics sounds so good, and it's been done a few times on the album. I really like the way that mixes. Ooh. We got dual bluesy guitars here. I like the shaker too. It's adding a little bit of character to this track. We haven't really heard that timbre anywhere else on the album. I don't think usually we would have a tambourine doing the same thing. Ooh, a little jazzy. Bass killing it down there. Interesting track there. This song does carry a weight to it harmonically, sure, but also timbre-wise. Bringing the electric guitars in for the entirety of this track is it's a specific decision. There's intention to that. A lot of songs on this album have just had acoustic guitars or violin. The electric guitar is sometimes brought in for a guitar solo, but not always something that is consistent through the song. So choosing to do that here feels intentional. And I think it's really to provide this grit, this darker sound, this energy to the track that isn't really found elsewhere. And it is pared down though. When we also have the violins or the acoustic guitars playing alongside it, it does soften some of that edge, but it's still some of that edge that we don't get anywhere else. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Chase the White Stag was the last time that we had an electric guitar consistently through the entirety of the track. So, yeah, unless I'm mistaken there, and maybe there is a third song somewhere in the middle of the album, this stands out as something quite unique. I think that gives it even more import. But aside from that, a lot of the song kind of follows along with what this back half is focusing on. The first half of the album, side A, is generally positive. There's some wistfulness and bittersweet nostalgia, but it's not really a negative side of the album. Here, though, we have Bard, which was about people who just weren't kind of getting their social due. Solstice Queen is a bright moment that is paired with Too Far the Distance, a really negative moment. And now we have Burning Daughters, about burning women and children because they're presumed to be witches, because they have knowledge of the world. Yeah, this is a heavy track. And it really makes me wonder where we're going to continue on. We have Receding Sun, which could be a good thing. That's a sunset. But it could be the end of light, which could be a negative thing. And then Midnight Fire, which, again, that could go either way too, just based off of titles. So this is interesting that so much of this part of the album is kind of focusing on more negative emotions and stories and feelings. Now it is split into two parts. And I find this interesting because part one is split into two parts as well. We have our verse and our chorus. And I found the verse to be heavier than the chorus, which had a little bit of an emotional uplift to it. And I didn't really figure out why when we listened to the lyrics. It could just be a moment where the two themes, lyrical and musical, are maybe done in isolation, not necessarily designed to be brought together, but it could also be designed to create a schism and to force the listener to analyze what's going on because there is a thematic separation here. Regardless, this is the moment when he says, "How could you believe the world's round? You never know how many daughters we have burned for their sin of knowledge that the world is round." You know, they're witches, right? They think we stand upside down. So it's felt like a weird place to bring a musical uplift. Now, granted, it wasn't like it became a beautiful, positive, joyful moment. It's just, it didn't feel as dark as the verse, which the verse was lyrically dark too. And maybe this was just simply for the concept of contrast. But I did find that to be an interesting idea. We have a bridge that kind of dips into a bit heavier stuff before taking us into the part two of this track, which is another one where I'm a little confused about well, here's the thing. I'm not confused about it. What I find interesting about this second half of the song is that it seems to be a completely separated, objective view of what was happening here. There seems to be no emotion to it at all. It's simply an observation. Daughters burned. People said they were witches. They purified them. Goodbye. And I don't know, personally, I don't know that I could write an emotionally neutral song for this concept. To me, it makes me really angry, and to hear the lyrics, it's like, goodbye. It's just like, no, I'm not connecting with this. But I find that interesting because art can do stuff like this, to have more of the subjective view. The alternative, though, and why I had a moment of possible confusion here, is that maybe it is supposed to be read a little bit more positively. Maybe we are supposed to be looking at it from the perspective of the holy men who thought they were saving their towns. Or maybe they didn't think they were saving their towns. Maybe it was complete power abuse. Regardless, maybe they're singing this part. I mean, after all, the chorus to part one definitely seems to be coming from their perspective as well. And we've kind of painted them as a bit of a evil caricature. If you saw the final frame from part one, we actually got to see one of the hooded cloaked men's face, and it was very distorted and sharp features and typical physical features of evil not supervillains, but like evil characters, at least in Western media. And maybe that's what this is supposed to be, but I don't know, we spend a lot of time in this moment that I feel should be charged with extreme negativity, and we get sort of a neutral, somber element. I had a real tough time enjoying that. There's a nice cadence and rhythmic movement to it. I like the general atmosphere to it, and I understand I'm asking for, like a folk rock, proggy folk rock band to do something aggressive. It's not fair to ask this of their music, but I'm at least trying to express why I feel that part two bounced off of me a little bit. I thought it started out strong enough, but I kind of wish it had gone in some sort of direction. The bluesy guitar work sounded great. I loved bringing in the two guitars. I thought that was awesome, but constantly coming back to this, I can't even call it a chorus. It's just the vocal line. That part just never really worked for me, and I kind of wish that the bluesy elements or the melancholic part might have been leaned into a little bit more, given the topic of what's going on. But that's just, that's totally subjective too. I'm curious what other people thought about it. I do think that, on the one hand, also, this, much like a couple of the other tracks, just kind of keeps going. And I don't know that the idea itself is strong enough for that, but it could also be my disconnect with the song that's speaking on that part too. Because like I said, I did enjoy coming to that guitar stuff every once in a while. And I don't think we really need to get into the lyrics much on this one, since we already talked a little bit about them. Yeah, we touched on everything I want to there. So let's jump into this next track called Receding Sun. See what's going on here.
So impressed, she goes on chanting, lay my oppositions to the receding sun. She takes my hand and leads me from here.
I didn't think that was 4/4 based off of the vocal rhythms, but yeah, just very interesting rhythmic structure on that first line, I guess. First couple of bars. could listen to a whole album, instrumental work of the guitars, bass, and violin work, and piano, you know, any other instruments they want to add in.
But green, the scene's surreal. God, am I really here? A sweet, long passion soul, it starts me moving. Tastes sweeter in the afterglow. The closeness needed, I don't want her to go. I may be greedy cause I know she's mine, and in this moment things are running smoothly. Let the car, I changed, I found myself. Let the car,
interesting burst of energy here.
Discovered myself spoken from truthful mouths. Discovered myself spoken from truthful mouths. Discovered myself spoken from truthful mouths. Discovered myself spoken from truthful mouths.
I like that voice off to the side on the left. Lots of energy pulling into the outro here. All right. Interesting way to come off of Burning Daughters, coming into something brighter, more optimistic and joyful. There's lots of positive energy on this, and it's very driving through a lot of it. It returns back to some of that rhythmic urgency that we saw on the first half of this album. And I appreciate kind of the album bringing some of these ideas back around and returning back to some of these concepts here at the end of the album. I'm curious if Midnight Fire is going to ramp things up and end on a big note, or allow Receding Sun to be that driving positive energy, and Midnight Fire ends up being a bit more of a lower energy, possibly somber finale to everything. As we've already hit our denouement, we can kind of wrap things up and chill things out for the final, like, 5 minutes of the album. But otherwise, I felt that this was, once again, a return to some of that older writing we saw. Lots of driving energy, lots of layers. We brought back tons of great guitar work. The vocal layers. I mean, this is Rogue Frequency doing what they do really well, merging prog rock and folk rock and bluesy elements all into one with really great layered writing all over the place. Yeah, I kind of dug this track. Lyrically, though, it feels like we're retreading grounds, but to me at least, a little less interesting than Solstice Queen, which took a long time to explore this relationship, as fleeting as it was. This takes less time, and it's sort of the same concept. It even begins with a woman chanting and someone being impressed by that, hearkening back to the siren song of the previous track. Says she takes my hand and leads me with a smile that's meant for only me. We go through the woods and find a clearing, and she lays down naked on the velvet green, and the scene is surreal. Am I really here? Hearkening back to the ideas of dreaming that we saw in the other track. Says her sweet long passion soul, it starts me moving. Goes on to once again express a short-lived physical attraction between these two, much like we saw in the other one. And at the end, they separate, though instead of the protagonist leaving because he has a vision of things he must do, she is just gone? Maybe? Says, left the corner, I changed, I found myself, discovered myself, spoken from truthful mouths. A lot of me, I here that we don't really see elsewhere in it. The rest of the song is about her and you and she. But I'm curious what this transformation, this metamorphosis is supposed to be about. Left the corner. I'm really curious what this corner is, if they were in a clearing in the woods. It says that he found himself and changed. I don't know. Discovered myself. I don't know. Like I said, I kind of think that Solstice Queen is a better version of this story. I think that the writing alongside the words works a lot better. I like the general pacing and phrasing throughout that one as well. And it takes more time to explore this relationship. This one basically says I had a one-night stand in the woods and I'm different now. And there's no extra context to that. So I don't know, it's fine. It just kind of bounced off of me a little. Musically, though, there's some solid ideas in there. And here we go into the finale, Midnight Fire. Let's see how Rogue Frequency wraps this album up. Bit quicker over pace, but I'd say energy-wise, it's a bit lower than Receding Sun.
Smoke caught by the moonlight beams.
Very light cymbal work too.
The ancient trees. Sparks that dance the fire gaze. Like crimson fairies from the glowing rage.
Definitely captures a calm of sitting around a fire. Oh, congregation of old friends, yeah. And even this about connecting with your friends and having drinks, getting hungover, having a good time. Very reminiscent of, what was that? We Once Ruled the World.
Living, breathing, fiery heart. Temptress of transfixed eyes. Drink to those who are not here. Sip the moment of our fleeting lives.
Fleeting lives? Yeah, this is bringing back a lot of themes from We Once Ruled the World. But I like how this has musically a theme of acceptance to it. And the chorus even has a little bit of acceptance. Not about wanting the time that stood before, but sipping and drinking to this.
Midnight fire, midnight fire, midnight fire, midnight fire, midnight fire draws us in, draws us in. Congregation of old friends, great friends, reflect the times that stood before, years before.
I like the violin over here, having a bit of a sappy melancholy, but feeling like it has momentum. It's constantly pushing forward.
Midnight fire draws us in, draws us in. Congregation of old friends, great friends, reflect the times that stood before, years before. We drink till hangover, morning time, morning time, morning time.
Yeah, solid way to wrap this track up. And Receding Sun gave us our high energy ending. This was a nice way to take a lower energy way to wrap the album up. Yeah. And I like the thematic element here too. And I like this, you still hear the fire and then a faint playing of the guitar. There's even some very quiet voices, and it's as if this song were captured in field recording about people sitting around a fire having a good time, maybe reminiscing, maybe cheering to times past, reflecting, ready to move on, to take that next step forward. Like I said, I love how this takes the ideas of we once ruled the world and pushes it from one of reminiscing to acceptance. Yeah, solid track right there. And honestly, I thought we were going to reach a point where we had too many choruses again, which at this point I think would have been thematically accurate. And funny enough, we did it. The choruses quit about the time I would have wanted them to be over. And we got the very meta ending to it, the field recording of people sitting around a fire, which I thought was fantastic. I love that to thematically wrap things up. But this is a song I would have thought it would have worked well to have an extended chorus repetition at the end. So that's kind of funny. But I like this better than my idea. Once again, though, not much to say about the song that I haven't already said. It captures a pretty good vibe here, something that is melancholic. It is a little heavier, lower energy, and drearier. There is still a thinking of the past, and even there in the credits, a dedication to people who weren't able to see this album released. And, there's definitely sadness whenever you think about the past, especially as you get older. It becomes impossible not to have some sort of negative emotion or memories. But I like how, unlike We Once Ruled the World, which seemed to fixate on the bittersweetness of the memories, how good they were and how much I miss them. This is about acceptance and stepping forward. It's about being with your friends now, trying to not recreate those times as teenagers, but to simply create good memories now that maybe in 10 or 20 years you can look back on fondly. The bittersweet element there is you might be looking back on them fondly because there's less people around your campfire today than 20 years ago. But it's about this acceptance that time moves on. You've got to grow. And I love how this song is bittersweet about memories, just like We Once Ruled the World, but to me feels like a very different approach to that. The bitterness isn't so much about not being in your youth anymore. It's about remembering the times you had and the people you had them with and realizing you can't really do that anymore. Maybe just not as physically fit as you used to be to do some of the stupid stuff you did back then when your body could be put through that sort of abuse. But maybe it's also just people not around anymore. But the positive element is about making the memories now to prepare your future, whether that is having a better future to go into or having memories now to remember. If you'll recall, one of the tracks in this album had mentioned that the memories they hold on to, it's bittersweet because they have those memories, but they also know that there's so many memories that they've forgotten. And this might be a memory they'll eventually forget as well. It's easier to remember things that are closer to today, to the now. Can't hang on to those old memories forever, especially as they begin to get decades old. You have to make new memories worth having. And I think a lot of this song is about that, about living in the now, enjoying the past. Your memories are there. Enjoy them for sure. I mean, you had those moments in your life. But you got to keep moving forward too. You can't live in the past. And I think that's what a lot of this track is. I mean, it talks about getting together with old friends, reflecting on time before, sure, but having a blast right now, partying, drinking until the morning time, and he says that we'll sip this moment to our fleeting lives. And I really like that line, that life is brief. Let's have a dedication to that, to what's ahead of us. I don't know. I think it's just a fantastic way to bring a few of the themes in this track full circle here, musically and lyrically. I quite enjoyed this, but these are just my thoughts on Rogue Frequency's celebration of the May Queen. Yeah, that's what it's called. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of things, your own perspective on any of these songs or lyrics, any of it. Please put all of that and anything else you'd like to add down into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Somewhere else, probably above the Linktree link, will be some links to access Rogue Frequency's social medias and streaming platforms and merch, websites, whatever else I can find and fit into the description box. Anything that's going to make it easier for you to engage with them and their art, if that's something you're interested in doing. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you head on over to any of their pages, like, heart, subscribe, follow, whatever sort of metric, show them some love from Critical Reactions community. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UTC. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I have such a hard time remembering that one. The 5 p.m., 9 p.m. thing, easy peasy. 11 a.m., 3 p.m. It's still 4 hours, and it's still Been doing this for how many years, and it's still not ingrained in me the same way the 5 and 9 is. Which makes the 5 and 10 really weird when we hit daylight saving time too. Anyways, though, yeah, live stream tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Goes for about 2.5 hours. We check out some music, we laugh, we have some good conversation, and it's just a real chill, laid-back time. It's a good moment to just chat with people in the community and just have fun. If you can make it, I highly suggest you do. Otherwise, I'll be back on Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. See, that just rolls off the tongue. Anyways, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.